we could start with you just introducing yourself and talking a little bit about your role and Telefonica and the general sort of approach with AI that Telefonica has.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Annie, for the introduction.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to be here with all of you. Thank you for the invitation. So as you said, we use AI in Telefonica across many different areas. So I think actually we have more than 500 AI systems in operation across our footprint in the company. So it's not something isolated, but it's already in many different systems. And if you look at kind of standard classification of how we use AI, you can think of using it in our back office, yeah. And so in everything that we do with customers, how we manage our things, in the front office, how we relate with them, understanding them better, having virtual chatbots, etc. But also we use it in our core operations, of course, the network, yeah, predictive maintenance, network planning, prediction of traffic congestion. So there are, of the 500, I think at least a few hundreds or more are about the network, yeah. So it's not just a few things, but it's really, really many things. Sometimes very generic, and some applications very specific. And then you also have the product and services, yeah, where we use more and more artificial in general. No? If you look at about generative AI, of course, that's still very new, but we're also starting to use that across many business opportunities. But at the moment, it's more trying things out to see how good it is, what are the risks, yeah, and to come and then to make the next decisions. Now, my role in all this is, so I'm the Chief Responsible AI Officer. So I'm not responsible for rolling out artificial intelligence in the businesses. I'm responsible now for using it in a responsible way. And that means for the systems that we deploy, making a risk assessment in terms of what is the impact on people if things go wrong, on society, even on climate. Yeah? And then understanding that, and then to find mitigation of preventive measures, yeah, that reduce that risk before putting that into the market. Of course, of all the applications we use, given our sector, it's not too much high-risk sector in terms of impacting human rights. Yeah? So most of the systems that just happen and they just go through. But in some cases, we may need some reflection and to make decisions on whether we actually should do this, and we want to do that.
So I don't know if you can answer this, Richard, really, but I think that maybe one of the biggest dangers or challenges, maybe is a better word, that we face with AI is possibly unintended consequences. And maybe if you get a complex chain of events where one thing happens at the same time or before something else, I'm just wondering, in your job as responsible AI officer, how you go about kind of trying to make sure you encapsulate that risk, yeah, so that the blast area, if something goes wrong, is contained.
Yes, that's a very good question. Actually, of course, yeah. I mean, I think the biggest risk of the use of artificial intelligence is malicious use, yeah. But okay, usually we're not talking about malicious use. Yeah? We're talking about legitimate use or even use with a good intention to improve things. But yes, as a side effect, there might be an unintended, yes, consequence. Now, you have to also take into account that today, yeah, what 5 years ago were unintended consequences, today some of them you might consider intended consequences. Yeah, I'm speaking about bias. I speak about discrimination. I'm speaking about let's say no appropriate human intervention in the AI value, the production chain. Because 5 years ago we didn't know a lot about it. Bias was just there, and we discovered it when it was too late. Today, actually, companies can act in advance, yeah? And that's actually what is responsible AI about. Yeah? While by design, well, you decide on putting a product in the market, you look at the potential risks, yeah? The unintended risks, and of course, there are many risks you are not aware of, yeah, but you have to make an effort, yeah, to think about, yes, this risk. Is there a dual use? You put something in the market, could it be very easily abused by somebody else? Well, and maybe you can do something, yeah, to prevent from that. or maybe you should not do it at all. Yeah. So it's that process by design where you ask questions about the product that are not the typical questions about the business opportunity, the customers, but also about what. So if an AI system has an accuracy of 80%, it means that 20% is going wrong. Yeah? Now you have to quantify the risk of that going wrong in terms of severity, because it's not the same. Yeah, recommending a movie versus doing a wrong diagnosis in the medical sector. About scale, is this applying a small group of people or maybe a full nation? And about probability, yeah, so the 20%. So if you put everything together, you can say, okay, if something goes wrong here, I have a reasonable big impact, small impact, or a medium impact, and based on that, you have to take actions and decisions. So that's the whole way of trying to think in advance about unintended consequences. Also talk to different stakeholders, yeah, that you might consider, and the stakeholders you haven't maybe considered but may also be affected. And if you want to think about second order consequences, that's even more complex. But look at, for instance, at some of the social networks that have a huge impact on even our democratic processes. Now, nobody thought in advance when they developed the social network that this could happen at all. So there are unintended consequences that you never can foresee. But of course, if you detect them, you have to take an action according to the values of your company.
So do you think largely it's about putting process in place, but that it's, as you said, it's beyond the usual process with new services and products when you're looking at the market and all, business opportunities and all that, you're looking at very different parameters potentially.
Yes, they are different parameters than the standard business and profit parameters, but it's not completely new because this is very much aligned with ESG thinking.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually many companies appear, especially at the moment in the E part for environment, they have to report on their emissions, and that is appearing in rankings. And then investors are deciding whether to invest in a company also based on these the emissions ratings of companies. Yeah? It's all about long-term stability, long-term sustainability that investors value. And therefore, there are many companies already doing things about ESG. Yeah? And the ethical part, the responsible part of it is in the S part, it's in the social part, in the society part. And therefore, this is not completely new thinking for companies. Of course, if you put it into your direct operation, then it is something new that you have to work on. But I mean, climate reporting and putting climate in the normal production chain in several large companies is already business as usual. And we should not forget that, especially in Europe, there will be an AI regulation in force in a few years. And then this whole process for high-risk applications only becomes mandatory. Yeah? If you don't do it, you might even get sanctions.
I know that. You see, that makes me a bit nervous, Richard. You saying there'll be AI regulation in the EU, and I'm sure a lot of other places in the world too, in a few years' time. I just feel a bit like in a few years' time, we'll be so far down the line. Is it a bit late?
Yeah, but that's what it is. Yeah. So the European regulation was agreed on in 7 December and will be voted on in March, early March. And then there is a 2-year grace period. It doesn't mean you're not sanctioned if you don't, but all the companies will want to work on that. And of course, technology moves forward. And during 2 years, actually, you can still do what you want. Yeah. But if you are wise, you prepare for this regulation. And the regulation, in my personal opinion, is not only about hindering innovation or putting barriers into companies so it takes longer time. It's about doing the right thing. And if you do it by design, actually, it might save you a lot of effort. Yeah? Because if you just go as fast as possible, you put something in the market and suddenly you see an unintended consequence, and you have to react. Maybe you have to withdraw the system from the market. If you detect those things in advance, you can mitigate, you can prevent, you can avoid, you can do many things which are much quicker and much cheaper.
So in a way, you need to go slowly and thoughtfully to go quickly.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
In a way, you need to go slowly and thoughtfully to go quickly, because if you go too fast, you just have to start over.
Yeah, but you go fast with 90%, and maybe 10% you have to think a bit more. Yeah, so it's not about every AI system that you have to do this reflective thinking. It's only for those systems that may create a harm. And there are many systems that you know in advance there will be no unintended consequences.
Okay, so this is a bit tricky because I understand that AI is being deployed across a very wide range of uses and applications. But I mean, how far do you feel that Telefonica is in its journey with AI? Do you feel like you're very close to the start, or that you've come a long way, or maybe both?
Well, I mean, we started let's say, our big data journey in 2011. Yeah, so that's already 13 years.
Wow.
AI came into the full mix in 2016, and actually, if you look at machine learning, yeah, so taking data set from the past and to try to calculate which customers want to churn, or which customer will uptake, buy a new product, that's all machine learning. You could do that with the standard machine learning. You can do that with deep learning. And so in that respect, we are quite far. Yeah, as I said, we have over 500 systems running, and the majority of those systems are either for the network or it's for optimizing those business processes in terms of propensity models, churn models, prediction models. So many things you can predict in the business. Yeah, and then for every single product, you have a different system to do that. So I think we are quite far in, let's say, in machine learning uptake, also in let's say, expert systems uptake. And generative AI is only 1 year and a few months, yeah, in the picture. Yeah. So we've explored a lot, like all other companies in the world, exploring a lot of things. In the beginning, mostly internally, because in the end, these models are so powerful, and if you have them speak to customers, they might speak things that you don't want them to speak. So yeah. It's more about taming this beast rather than trying to make it work well, yeah, because it works so well that you cannot control what comes out. So we use it actually a lot internally with our people, with our call center people, that instead of looking at manuals of how do I respond to this question or how do I go through this process, having a search engine that takes all those manuals into a generative AI model, and then they can simply search, and the facts that it retrieves are coming from our data, our models, our documentations. But the whole dialogue and the formulation of the phrases in a natural is coming from external large language models.
So looks like it has the potential to save a lot of time and effort. How well is it working out so far?
So far, it is amazing. Yeah?
Interesting. Okay.
If you see what kind of things you can ask this kind of, I call it search engine, yeah, compared to a generic search engine on the internet, and also compared to a standard search engine that you had before on documents, the difference is amazing. Yeah? It is true that you always have to have knowledge about the situation, because with this approach that we have, yeah, it's called RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generative AI. You limit a lot the risk of hallucinations, yeah, that they come up with things that don't exist because they just predict the next words. You reduce that significantly, but still, it can predict things that are actually not true. So therefore, you have to be careful, and therefore we use it first internally. We use the same technology to manage, for instance, the incidents in our networks, in our IT networks. A lot of tickets come in, and with this technology, you could do great ways to speed up the processing of tickets and even the solving resolution of problems, and it's much quicker. So the productivity increase, you can reach a lot more with the same amount of effort. But using it with customers externally, we also exploring with it, because we have a system called Aura that already is a digital assistant, and we are now bit by bit exploring to put in that generative AI to improve even the customer experience.
Now, I spoke to one of your colleagues recently, and he was saying that one thing that kills innovation, which we've mentioned a couple of times this morning, one of the things that kills innovation is always being backwardly compatible. And that so often when telcos build platforms, they build in all the stuff they had already rather than the focus is on the stuff they want the new platform for. So they replicate what's already. And his suggestion was that this almost obsession, a compulsive effort on backward compatibility really stifles innovation, and really and AI is part of this, that you need to think about the systems going forward rather than trying to make it work across everything that you're going to be sunsetting. And I guess this is a big complex question. I just wondered what you thought.
Well, I think definitely that is always an issue in large companies that have huge legacy systems. But I think there are so many use cases that you can use with AI. Yeah? So I would suggest why not start with one that doesn't include this whole complex legacy thing. There are so many things you can do newly, or you can do on top of the systems that you have. Many AI systems just need data to work with. Now, if you can get the data out of your legacy systems and then you can work with that, you can still do a lot of stuff while being compatible with what you have. Of course, if you want to bring the output of the system back into the legacy system, then you have to do integration. Yeah? And that might be more or less painful.
So that's what was going to be my next question, really, all around data. So obviously, AI in many instances, probably all instances, needs data. But I guess when the systems were designed and also the lakes or whatever other approaches to controlling and managing data were built, it possibly wasn't really with AI in mind so much as analytics. How ready is the data to have AI applied to it, and what sort of processes are needed to make it AI ready? Or is the AI smart enough to use what it's got?
Well, if you look at users traditional AI, traditional between quotes, because it's only 10 years old. Data garbage in, garbage out. Yeah. So if you don't have quality data, you cannot trust. There's always an error or margin, as I said. But if your data is not even good, you train it on the wrong things, and then the outcomes may be completely wrong. Yeah. So data is essential for traditional AI. If you look at the generative AI, which is mostly trained on the whole internet, by large big tech companies. Actually, your own data doesn't matter so much, because the data is out there and they train the model, and then you use the model as a kind of oracle, as a kind of black box that knows all kinds of things. Then if you feed it with your own data, it's not typical data, it's usually documents, corpus. And managing documents is not such a difficult problem as managing your data through a data governance project. Yeah? So data governance is very important for machine learning, for your own where you have your own data, whereas for generative AI, it's less of importance. Yeah. Now, it is true that many people, let's say, think that telcos have a lot of data that just sits there to wait to be used. Now, that's a completely underestimation of the complexity.
That's always the line, right, Richard? That's always what's said.
But if you think that, then you're going to have a lot of frustrations, because let's take data from the network for a few months to see how our customer service works. Well, then you say, the data sits with the provider. No, it's you can't get it because it sits in our system. So if you want it, well, it takes 6 months and you have to pay $1 million of dollars to get it out because we hadn't thought about it. So data just doesn't sit there. Sometimes it's even within the company there are silos. And having data means you control what messages you give about this business area, and that is power. Sharing power is always difficult in large organizations, because it becomes transparent what you do. But the only way to create value across the company from data is to share data across the company. So many companies who have suffered let's say, not a good access of data, they come to the conclusion to have a kind of overall global approach, which means, for instance, they decide, okay, this is the data dictionary or the data model that we agree on, and then we have to map all our data of all the different systems into this kind of format, syntactic, semantic format, and from there, it is accessible for any system, AI system that we want to use. If you don't do that, you have to repeat a lot of the same work all over the time. And traditionally, about 70% of the costs of building analytic systems are going into the data. Once you have the data in a good format, etc., then the rest is relatively easy. You do some analytics, some AI, and you have to, of course, you have to deploy it into the operation, which is also not that trivial. But the biggest chunk is struggling with the data. So therefore, having a data governance in place with data steward, with data owners, with automatic programs that check data for quality, for differences across months, and also what is important, have a data collection strategy. It's not that all the data sits there and I can take it whenever I want. No, if you want to certain data, you have to plan for it, and you have to maybe invest a little bit in it to get it. And then you need to maintain it, because it's not a one-off. It needs to be there all the time. And sometimes if you build a product, you build an app, for instance, a customer app, you think about what's the functionality I need to give to the customer. Should be able to check his bills, should be able to, for sales, etc. But you should also think about if once this product is in place, what data would I need to be able to learn from it, to improve. So I call that data collection by design. Not only thinking about the features of the product, but also thinking while designing what data I would like to capture for the future. And that is a thinking that I think is more and more common, but still it's not common everywhere.
Okay, well, that's interesting. So collection by design should be part of your data planning process. Yeah,
Indeed,
how we're going to get at it and what we're going to do. Actually, when you put it that way, it sounds really obvious, and yet so many systems were not designed that way at all.
No, I know so many systems that they were built, they were deployed, and then let's see how it goes. And then there's, okay, what data do we have? Well, we have this, and this, but why don't we have that? Yeah, well, because you didn't ask for it.
You didn't think to ask for that. Yeah. Okay. So do you think AI can kind of help bridge and overcome those shortcomings in data systems?
Yes, also, yeah. I mean, it's another problem. You have a lot of data in the system, and you need to make sense of all that, and that as such is a problem that you can try to solve with AI as well. Of course, there are different kinds of AI. Generative AI could do something. You have a lot of other non-supervised learning, but I think a solution that you take any kind of data from any platform and you can turn it in nicely, quality, high quality data, transparency, even documentation, automatic metadata of the data, that would be a great product, which I think some startups are working on, but as far as I know, it doesn't exist yet.
Okay, so that's going to be the magic.
That could be, an opportunity.
Yes, exactly. So we're getting, I'm sorry to say, towards the end of our session. Richard, just briefly, I'm wondering, we're thinking a lot about application and internal use and so on, but I'm just wondering what business benefits do you think Telefonica is going to enjoy from judicious, careful application of AI?
So if you look at the business let's say the business value that AI creates in general, so an economic value, it's actually not so easy to calculate. So as I said, we have 500 systems, and it's an interesting exercise to go one by one and see, okay, what is the actual value that the system has gone. So personally, I'm kind of obsessed with that, to know that, but it's culturally also very hard, because if you know that a system can generate 20% more revenue, then let's say the business owner might be worried that he gets next year a 20% higher target, which of course the person would like to generate more revenues, but wants to be sure that it's possible, rather than having. And if you have cost savings of 5%, well, you may have 5% less budget next year. So it's a cultural thing that's a cultural. And apart from that, if you optimize the network for having less traffic congestion, now how do you translate that into an economic benefit? Or if you have a better customer service, how do you translate it into an NPS score? There are so many other factors that influence that might be difficult. And then if you optimize churn, then it's not only AI that helps that. It's also the marketing department, the call center. So it's not so easy to come up with a number, but I think it's still a good endeavor and a good attempt to try to quantify. Now, if you look at the responsible use of AI or the ethical use of AI, where you do this different thinking before you bring things to the market, the business benefits there are several. For instance, we see that in our rankings of ESG, more and more, let's say those companies that list companies in terms of social privacy, free speech, etc., are looking at. They ask companies, do you have something in place? Do you have AI ethical principles? That's what they asked 4 years ago. Now they not only ask, do you have principles? They ask, do you have a governance model? And is it voluntary or is it compulsory? So those companies, they become more and more precise in what they ask. And of course, if you are higher in the rankings, that's a business benefit, because you're more open with investments. We've seen that with, as I said before, with environmental things. That's now a key thing. There is no big company who is not reporting, and it has an impact on business. So this will happen with responsible AI. With environment, it took 15 years. I think with AI, it will take like 5 or 3 years. But it will happen, in my opinion. Then also, if you as a company, you have a message that you're not only a profit-seeking machine, but you're also caring for the environment, for societies, for the people, not only as consumers, but also as citizens. I think that's a message that more and more actually consumers and citizens value. So responsible companies. The same holds for your customers, but also for your employees. So employees more and more, especially the new generations, they value that the companies they work for think broader than just profit. And this is all about thinking broader than profit. Of course, profit is important, but not at all costs. So there are many today a bit still intangible business benefits of being responsible AI, but more and more they will become tangible, and companies will be able to quantify them.
Richard, that was a fascinating answer. Thank you. We've got a question. So we were going from broader picture to the more specific. So Mohammed has asked, when we're talking about taming the beast could be, we were talking about the beast, I suppose, in a way as being the data, but he's suggesting the beast might be large language models. And would Telefonica be going to design your own large language models rather than use those developed maybe by big tech, for instance?
Well, if we would develop a language model, it would not be a beast. It would be a small, very small animal compared to the large language models. And this is my personal, more strategic opinion. I don't think it makes sense that one telecommunications company builds a large language models similar to what OpenAI or Meta or Amazon or Microsoft are doing. The investment and the resources required for that is so huge that you can't. What you can do is build a large language model or customize, for instance, an open source large language models for the telecommunications sector. And then I think it would make maybe make more sense to do that as a sector rather than each individual company. But on the other hand, whereas, for instance, the big ones are now have large language models that cover any area, I'm pretty sure that the trend will be, let's make them smaller so they consume less energy. It's cheaper to train them, it's cheaper to maintain them, and let's focus them on telco sector, media sector, legal sector, public administration, finance. So I think those things will happen in the near future. And then your question is, okay, if I build it myself, and then can I keep up with what's happening outside there? And you don't know at this moment. So I think what I would suggest at the moment of advice is just explore, try whatever you can, do as much experience, get as much experience as you can, but don't bet on one thing specifically, because in 6 months the world may be completely different. Yeah? So there will be a time that things will become more stable, and then it's time to standardize to make really a strategic decision of how to move forward.
Richard, I'm really sad to say we're out of time. That was great. Thank you very much indeed, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Okay, it was a pleasure. Thank you very much.